Subriel Matias had another tremendous performance last night, and I think it's time for all of us to collectively start to give Subriel Matias his credit, to give the guy his flowers. Now, Subriel Matias obviously has a very solid resume so far. He's beaten a lot of undefeated up-and-comers, a lot of contenders, etc., and he's been getting a lot of credit for a while now, but I think this fight against Ergashev was truly the fight where any doubts that we've had about Matias, when you look at his previous defeat to Petros Ananyan, any doubts about his ability at top level, I feel like they really went away last night. Because the thing is, a lot of people, including myself, were picking Subriel Matias to defeat Ergashev. I was picking Matias to dig deep late and win a very close decision, 7-5, 8-4, in a war, a great fight. I felt Ergashev's power and his explosiveness, and honestly, his amateur pedigree would be enough to carry him throughout the fight and make it a real war for Matias. But Matias completely proved me and many others wrong, because a lot of the people that were picking Matias thought it'd be a very tough fight. He'd have to dig very deep, he'd have to push very hard. Many people were actually picking Ergashev. I was considering picking Ergashev for a period of time as well, but I did settle for Subriel Matias, and Matias looked absolutely tremendous, man. He looked phenomenal. And at this point, I view Subriel Matias as one of the boogeymen in the sport of boxing. This is a guy that I don't see anyone volunteering to fight. Yes, Regis Prograis did call him out on Twitter last night, or X that they call it now, but we all still call it Twitter. He did call Subriel Matias out last night, and even though I do think Regis Prograis is a guy that'd be down to fight so many top-level opponents, I think deep down Regis does not want that fight. I don't know if he was clout chasing. Maybe he does want the fight, but I think deep down he knows that that's an extremely difficult fight for him. And I'm not saying Regis isn't capable of winning it. At one point, I would have picked Regis to defeat Matias at one point. But honestly, in 2023, and assuming the fight, if that fight does happen in 2024, I think it would be a very tough task for Regis Prograis. I think we'd have to see a retro Regis performance. If we see the Regis that fought in his last bout, a fight that I felt he lost against Zarilla, if we see that version of Regis Prograis, I don't know what he would do to defeat Subriel Matias. He does have good power. He's a strong guy. He has good fundamentals. He's a good fighter overall, but I think the Regis that we saw last time out would not stand much of a shot against Subriel Matias. I don't see Teofimo Lopez wanting to fight Subriel Matias, and I think Teofimo Lopez has a very good shot of winning that fight. I'd probably even pick Teofimo, honestly. That's probably one of the few guys I would still favor over Subriel Matias, but I don't think Teofimo Lopez would want that fight at all. I don't think Devin Haney, and I do like Devin Haney. He's reposted my tweets many times, and I definitely support Devin Haney, and I'm rooting for him against Regis, even though I do like Regis. I don't see Devin Haney volunteering for a Subriel Matias fight. And the thing is, I wouldn't blame him. Who's willingly fighting Subriel Matias? And I think Devin Haney is capable of schooling Subriel Matias because of how quick his feet are, because of how polished of a fighter he is. But the thing is, once Subriel Matias gets within close, once he's able to fully effectively let his hands go, all of these fighters crumble. You know, I was very high in a man named Batyrzan Jukembayev. This is a guy Subriel Matias fought in May of 2021 on the Doneru Bali undercard. Jukembayev, a very good fighter, and if you look at the fight, he gave Subriel Matias one of his toughest fights. But he proved me wrong. I was very confident in picking Jukembayev. I knew Matias was a great fighter and would wear opponents down very effectively, but I thought Jukembayev would take him, and Jukembayev did hurt Matias a couple times. He won a lot of rounds in that fight, but he ended up submitting to Matias in the 8th round. When you look at his fight against Malik Hawkins, I was never super high in Malik Hawkins, but he was a nice little fighter. A lot of people were picking him to beat Matias. I was picking Matias to win that fight. He made him quit in the corner after 6. It was actually stopped by the ring doctor, but it was a corner stoppage victory. Then he fought Petros Ananyan in the rematch and made his fight, stopped him in the corner after 9. That he avenged his only defeat. I felt he actually beat Ananyan back in February 2020, but I didn't have too big of an issue with the decision because he should have beaten him much easier, and he did. But in the rematch, he battered him and made him submit in the corner. Then he fought Ponce and made him quit after 5 in a fight where Ponce was having a lot of success early, but Matias made him fold. And then against Ergashev, he made him quit after 6. So this guy's coming off 5 corner stoppages in a row, not to mention, obviously, rest in peace to Maxim Dadashev. That was another corner stoppage victory he has. He's a very, very... it's actually, I just find it comical how many corner stoppages he had in a row. I thought he only had 5. I thought he only had 4. Turns out he has 5. He's made so many fighters quit in the corner, back to back to back to back to back. I mean, we thought Lomachenko was good at doing that. And to be fair to Loma, he would make them quit due to frustration, while Matias would make them quit in the corner due to just the beating they would receive to him. And I genuinely think Matias is one of the most devastating fighters a fighter can face in the sport. This is a guy who just wears you down, breaks you down, makes you fold, makes you crumble. He's done this to every fighter he's fought in his career. because obviously Ananyan won the first fight, but in the rematch he did it to Ananyan as well. Matias is a new breed of Puerto Rican fighter, because usually Puerto Rican fighters are crafty on the outside. They're boxer punchers. They use the jab. They fight on the back foot more often. Maybe they'll come forward, but they'll do it very tactfully. Matias just breaks you down and beats you up. And shout out to Matias. He's a guy who deserves more credit. He truly is the boogeyman of his weight class, and I think he deserves a lot more credit than he's gotten. Now he's getting that credit. Now people are truly starting to realize how good of a fighter Subriel Matias is. And I'm really intrigued to see what Subriel Matias will do next. I'm really interested to see who is willing to face this guy. Because you look at the other champions in the weight class. You look at the possible other fights that could be made for Subriel Matias at 140. You have Teofimo Lopez. I don't see that happening. Regis Prograis, I think Devin's going to beat him, so it's not really going to matter. Richardson Hitchens is a nice up-and-comer. I don't see that happening. Arnold Barboza is food for Subriel Matias. Jose Ramirez would definitely not take that fight. Gary Antoine Russell, he is with the PBC. That is a realistic fight. I don't see Gary Antoine Russell standing much of a shot. I think at one point Gary Antoine Russell was very impressive to me, but honestly, his last couple outings, the Barthélemy fight specifically, I really don't view him as good of a fighter as I did. I do think he has potential to be tremendous, though. Michel Rivera would never fight Subriel Matias. And he did have a good little win against Sergey Lipinets, but Matias would destroy Michel Rivera. Jose Pedraza would not fight him. I'm just looking at the fighters at 140 that are ranked. Rolly Romero, who has a belt, would get demolished by Matias. Yes, Rolly has good one-punch power. He is explosive. He's strong physically. But if that guy tries shoving Subriel Matias the way he was shoving Tank and shoving Anthony Yigit, he's going to get battered. He's going to get hurt. Subriel Matias is the boogeyman at 140. Obviously, at 147, it's a completely different thing. I think Boots Ennis puts him to sleep. Crawford, we don't even need to get into that. We know what Crawford would do to Subriel Matias. The reason Subriel Matias is so effective at his fights is because he's so much physically bigger than his opponents. This guy moves up to 147, his style will be nowhere near as effective, and I don't see him pulling off a lot of these big victories. But at 140, I still think he's a massive threat to his opponents. I think he has potential and possibility to be extremely dominant at 140. But when he moves up to 147, if he does move up, because he is relatively weight drained, I feel like, if he does eventually move up to 147, I think his run will eventually end. But right now, very good fighter, Subriel Matias. The boogeyman, just checking something. The boogeyman at the weight class for sure. Super dominant, super effective. This guy's resume is very solid for guys at 140. You look at his resume, he avenged his only defeat to Petros Ananyan, fought a very solid undefeated prospect in Maxim Dadashev. Malik Hawkins, an undefeated contender. Batrzan Jukambayev, who I was super high on. I thought he was one of the best prospects / contenders in the sport, and he's actually bounced back since that defeat. Hasn't beaten anyone too crazy, but he's shown he'll end up being a very good fighter, Jukambayev. I hope you guys remember this. Petros Ananyan, he avenged. Jeremias Ponce, that was a guy that people expected to give Matias a great fight, and he gave him a decent fight, but eventually folded. And Ergashev, who everyone was high on, every hardcore fan was high on, he made him fold in 5. That's my thoughts, though. Tell me your thoughts in the comment section below on Matias. What do you want for him next? Do you think anyone's capable of beating him at 140? What do you guys think? Tell me your thoughts down below. Have a good one, guys. God bless. I'll see you guys later. Peace.